Hi Stevie, you should always sell your alts for Bitcoin. That's great advice. You should follow your own inspiration there and do that. You won't regret it. Locate app. There you are, friend. I'm just trying. Hello. Hi John C. How's Miami? Miami's okay. I live in a small town now, so looking at big town, big pollution, you know, coming originally from London and coming back to a big city, I'm surprised at how I could ever really deal with the sheer pollution and noise. And let me just, maybe I'm gonna create a good view here. I'm gonna get my phone, guys, and stream some of the conference when I'm there tomorrow and the day after. What have we got here? I mean, it's a concrete jungle. That's what it is. Yeah. Oh, hey John, how are you, man? Thanks for watching the stream. Good to hear from you. So, we're having some fun with Bitcoin here because my credit cards aren't working properly, and there are no taxis, only Uber, and Uber won't take any of my credit cards either. So I've installed Uber on my Android phone that I brought, thank God, because this one is Graphene, which Uber doesn't work on. This one does, it's Android. I've installed Uber on it, and I bought Uber gift cards using Bitcoin on Bitrefill, so that got me around the credit card problem. Surprisingly, I haven't met many people here that know anything about Bitcoin or are aware there's a conference going on, despite it being the biggest Bitcoin conference in history and the biggest event in North America this weekend. Yeah, so I have to talk for 15 minutes on the End of Fiat stage on Saturday about what we were doing with our based client release as opposed to the core release for the Taproot activation. I haven't yet really prepared exactly what I'm going to say for it. It's only 15 minutes, but this is obviously really important to me to get this right because this was an important project to work on. and I think that would be the main thing I want to discuss. I don't really want to read off a screen, I want to just talk. And I have no idea yet if anyone will be watching. I don't know if there will be thousands of people watching my talk, or 6 people, or no one. I have no idea yet, and it would be nice to know, but despite that, I'm feeling very confident and very happy about doing this. It's my first time giving an actual talk at a Bitcoin conference. How is it sounding? Can anyone... My laptop fan's going crazy. I didn't bring any of my microphone or webcam or anything, so I'm just using the laptop. I will switch to the phone for the Bitcoin conference when I'm there. Right now I'm just going to start setting up my account here. Oh, good point. How do I even do that? Manage my Google account. I'm going to try and sign in, guys, on my Android, so that I can stream live from the conference. Feedback. Okay, thank you. It won't be live streamed. What I'm doing, it will be up on the Bitcoin Magazine YouTube channel. That may change, or that may be incorrect, but I don't think the end of Fiat stage is streamed live. There's probably a far more popular thing happening at the same time with some insane heavyweight like Michael Saylor or Max Kaiser or something like that. So I'm really not expecting a lot of people to attend my talk, but nonetheless, you never know. Not that many people are really interested in the activation protocols at the moment, which surprises me, given how much rallying and excitement there was around the SegWit upgrade. Taproot is not as significant an upgrade as SegWit was. SegWit really paved the way for all of this sophistication in the Bitcoin protocol. Taproot's just the first example of that. But it's also gone off kind of without a hitch so far. Like, we were really expecting... I wasn't expecting the mainstream activation approach to actually work, and here we are. Only 18 blocks this period have said no to the upgrade, and that's nothing like enough to prevent the upgrade from actually activating. And 695 have gone green. I don't know if you guys know what I'm referring to. I'm referring to this. I'll paste it in the chat there. Taproot.watch. In order for our client to really come in and save the day, we would need not just this period to fail, but the next 3 as well. And it looks like this one will succeed, in which case Taproot activates in November, and a lot of people wonder why the hell we released the client we did in the first place, given that it all worked. But the point is, we didn't know it was going to work. We didn't even know if Core were going to release speedy trial as an activation method anyway. We released ours first, assuming they would continue bike shedding and arguing amongst themselves, and then the minute we released ours, they had a shit fit and released theirs, and theirs worked. Or I should say, it looks like it's going to work. Mara Pool obviously still are saying no to the upgrade. They're also the OPEC compliant, the OFAC compliant miners as well, the ones censoring allegedly bad transactions. We don't like them very much. Let me just edit the stream. Preparation for my talk at Bitcoin 2021. And what is the talk on? Taproot. USF, etc. Thanks for tuning in, if anyone's actually here. I think Joyce, you're here, and John, maybe you're still here as well. Funny to watch the mempool at the moment. I don't know if you guys watched that, but we have about 10 blocks worth of transactions sitting in the mempool. That's nothing. Right now, doing Bitcoin transactions is almost free again, and it hasn't been the case for a long time. And that's funny because the reason we think that's the case is because every Bitcoiner pretty much has left their wallet at home and headed off to Miami. There's over 12,000 of us here, I believe, and that means there's no Bitcoin transactions going on right now, which is why the network is wide open. And that's awesome because there's going to be stuff at the conference that I can buy using Bitcoin, and I'm really looking forward to that. Anyway, back to what I was saying about Uber. I bought an Uber. I've now streamlined it so that on my Android none of my credit cards work on Uber, but I finally got Uber working. What I can do now is go onto Bitrefill, which I just made an account of. I've known this company for years, but I've never actually used them. I go on there, I buy an Uber gift certificate, and then I redeem that in the Uber app. And I can buy these gift certificates on Bitrefill by using Bitcoin or Bitcoin within the Lightning Network. Either way, it's basically instant. The only issue is I might over purchase and end up with a bit of Uber credit left that I can't actually use once I get back to Vancouver Island in Canada. I think there's Uber now in Vancouver, but I'm not sure about that, and it would suck to have a little bit of credit left. But other than that, I'm actually really happy that I've got this process down now. This is not me, I have no affiliation with Bitrefill, guys, but I'm just really impressed with the product. Do they have a Canadian arm? That would be interesting. You can select the country. Canada. What products do they sell in Canada? Okay, so they got Uber Eats, they've got Esso, they've got Mobil, which is another oil company. You can buy any app on the App Store. That's the Apple App Store, not the Google one. You can buy iTunes, H&M, Home Depot, Amazon, eBay, DoorDash, Best Buy, Cabela's, PlayStation, Virgin. All right, so I can now pay my cell phone bill using Bitcoin. Hotels.com. I mean, I should say, guys, my flights here, my hotel accommodation, and now all of my travel is being paid for using Bitcoin. And it's quite funny when people still think you can't. People firstly make the mistake of thinking medium of exchange is all that matters, right? Oh, Bitcoin's not real because you can't spend it anywhere. Well, first off, who cares? People don't really like spending Bitcoin that much anyway. It's much better for saving. But second off, you can. They even have Air Canada on here. So Bitrefill is a really good way to buy what you need using Bitcoin. They have Whole Foods. I was just at Whole Foods, Gap, Old Navy, just a plethora of companies. Skype, Tinder. Wow, you can buy Tinder credit using Bitcoin. Amazing. So, yeah, I'm really stoked that I've got this finally, this setup. It's realistic to use now. For some reason, I've never needed it in Canada where I live. But I believe you could probably buy Thrifty's things with it as well. So, yeah, I'm still trying to prepare for this talk. I was invited here to talk by Aaron Van Weerden, who is a journalist for Bitcoin Magazine, and he was one of the few people that paid attention to our client. Collecting Bitcoin is the goal. I'll spend Bitcoin if it's to support something, though. Yeah, for sure. I mean, spend Bitcoin all you like, but generally it hurts if you don't rebuy the same amount of Bitcoin with fiat when you do. Of course, spend Bitcoin, but it does create downward pressure on the market when you spend Bitcoin, because 9 times out of 10, the merchant will sell the Bitcoin that you give them for dollars or whatever the fiat is. Even Elon Musk was set to do that with Tesla. That was a nice thing when he said that, back when he was a friend to Bitcoin. Now I don't even know what he is, whether he's an enemy or a friend. I don't think he's figured it out either. He got in an argument, he's butt hurt over it, but at the same time, I think he realizes how hard you get wrecked when you try and attack Bitcoin. You tend to invite a lot of unwelcome questioning from people that start digging into you and going, what makes you so great then? Turns out Tesla is survives only because of carbon credits and isn't running a profitable business at all. And most of the charging if Bitcoin mining isn't green, Tesla charging certainly isn't green. Most of the charging that happens, I've seen a few people, Bitcoiners went in hard, and they've looked at where most of the the breakdown of Teslas, like by city, by proximity to different power sources, and it looks like the vast majority of Tesla charging goes on with coal power plants. So it's not that it's environmentally friendly, it's just deferring the environmental damage to somewhere you can't see it. You don't get to look at an exhaust pipe like chucking out black clouds of smoke. Instead, that's happening miles away at a power plant, and you get a nice clean Tesla. Plus, I wouldn't be buying a Tesla anyway. They're not self-sovereign vehicles. You can't drive within a very short window of time. You won't be able to drive where you want. You'll be able to drive where the Tesla says you can drive. Just like using an app on your iPhone. You can only do what Apple say you can do with your iPhone. You can't do what you want if it's outside of those boundaries. Teslas are a disaster waiting to happen, in my opinion. Smart cars in general. So yeah, thanks for being here, you guys, while I just sort of get my thoughts together for what I'm going to talk about at the Bitcoin conference. What I'm talking about is this the Taproot activation client that me and Shinobius and Luke Dash Jr. released. Tesla is way too centralized. I agree, Stevie. So yeah, what I'm going to be talking about is why we released this client, and it helps to understand the timeline a little bit. It looked like Core weren't going to release anything, and it looked like if they did release something, it would be contrary to what I thought the community consensus was. It turns out community consensus in Bitcoin around technical features like Taproot activation is pretty much most people saying, whatever Core release, I'm fine with that. I didn't realize that. I thought people were more, I guess, self-sovereign again. I thought people were like, I will run Bitcoin Core as long as Bitcoin Core does what I say it should do. The minute it doesn't, I'll run something else. Turns out most people aren't actually like that, and are just LARPing, and will just kind of use whatever they're told to use by the experts. There is logic to that, but at the same time, the one thing that keeps Bitcoin safe is the fact that Bitcoin Core, the main reference client that everyone uses, if that ever went rogue, and if malicious developers ever started putting stuff into it that was contrary to the principles of Bitcoin, the point would be you can do something else. You can use something else, you can run your own client. I thought that was well understood. It wasn't particularly well understood, and I'd like it to be echoed through by the people that watch my talk at Bitcoin 2021. I want people to understand that you have to keep your eyes on the code of Bitcoin Core, and if you don't like what it's doing, you need to sound the alarm about it. You need to be able to write code. You need to be able to create an alternative, and you need to be doing that within a community that's receptive to what you're offering. You shouldn't be doing that. It shouldn't be falling upon deaf ears. And this is some of the fear that was, some of the unconfidence that was inspired in me by the general reaction to what happened when we released our client. People just generally said, this is going to be a dangerous client. It's not the official one. It's going to steal your coins. And I'm saying, what? There's no official anything in Bitcoin. If you think there's an official this or an official that in Bitcoin, then you don't understand Bitcoin. It's an utterly decentralized ecosystem. There is no one in charge of it. And if anyone's telling you you're not proper somehow, you're not legitimate, then they are doing a disservice to Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is supposed to work in the way that you want it to work as a sovereign individual. It's not supposed to be you submitting to the whims of any centralized party. That's why we don't have big blocks. That's why we don't have more inflation than we initially started with. That's why we don't have a whole bunch of malicious upgrades that have been proposed. It's because people don't actually want them, but big companies do. Miners said, we're going to keep getting 50 bitcoins a block during the first halving. They were going to make their own fork. They capitulated. we didn't acquiesce to that small-ish group of small part of the ecosystem. Then we had, the exchanges going on the attack during the fork wars, Coinbase and all those people trying to force big blocks on us. Those guys again were ignored and slapped back, and they deserved to be, and they learnt their lesson. Miners again seem to have just learnt their lesson, because they are activating Taproot despite the fact that they are able to not activate Taproot if they don't want to. This conference falls at a very interesting time, because it's not yet clear whether Taproot is going to activate or not. It looks like it probably will. I'd give it about a 75 to 80% chance that we activate Taproot this difficulty period. Every day that passes that we continue with green blocks signaling as we have been so far, every day that passes that the ratio remains what it is, the more likely it is we activate. Right now, if a malicious pool like Antpool were to decide to not signal anymore, they could still screw up the process, because we're only 34% of the blocks this period are signaling activation, and we need 90% by the time the period's up. We still have 64% of the blocks that haven't been found yet, and 90% is a big threshold to meet. One relatively large pool turning off activation would be all that would be needed for Taproot to fail this period. Then we have 3 more periods, and after that, the only thing the Bitcoin world has in reality and not just in conjecture would be my client. And right now, most people don't even know my client exists, and about 70 or 80% of the people that do know it exists are actively hostile to it, because they haven't really considered things properly. They haven't really thought back to the true principles of why Bitcoin is what it is. But that said, we do have a lot more support than I expected as well. Originally, this talk I was going to be giving was framed as a debate rather than me just talking, and I needed to find someone to debate me that thought what I was doing was a bad idea, and I couldn't find anyone because no one did think what I was doing was a bad idea. So that was a strange and encouraging thing to happen, even if it meant I couldn't get the debate I wanted to have. The debate was originally billed as being between me and a Bitcoin Core dev called Matt Corallo. Matt Corallo, of course, is the guy that hasn't contributed anything to Bitcoin in years, and the last thing he did contribute was a horrific bug in Bitcoin, the inflation bug that almost broke the whole system. And generally he's not doing too well, but as a developer at least, his reputation is not as good as it might have been if he was a bit more careful and had been a bit more responsible with the disclosure of that bug when it came out. But anyway, the debate was supposed to be between me and him. He said he wouldn't do it if he would be debating me, and sadly, for reasons I don't know the full workings of what went on in the background, but now it's just basically him talking about activation methods in perpetuity and how things will move forward and a general overview, and I don't really like anything he's got to say on it. I think he's not to be trusted. I don't think he's a particularly reliable person in the Bitcoin space. I think he's definitely doing more harm than good. And he's also one of the chief people encouraging people or discouraging people from trusting or using our client, I should say. I'm happy for him to discourage people trusting our client, but only if he's discouraging people from trusting any client, because you shouldn't be doing any trusting. This is Bitcoin. You should be verifying things for yourself. You should be running your own node. You should be verifying the integrity and the code of the software that you're using when you're using it. If anyone is telling you to trust Bitcoin Core, well, they're not really doing you any favors. They might be pragmatically sending you in the right direction in a temporary fashion, because if you don't know anything about C++ and you don't know anything about, then fine. Even I would say just use Bitcoin Core. But you need to go deeper than that. You need to know what you're actually running. It's just like if you want to drive a car, it really would be of assistance to you generally for you to learn how your car works, so that if you're ever in a situation where, for example, it breaks down, you're able to fix it. and if you know what you need to fix it, and it will just generally help your effort in being a motorist. So in being a Bitcoiner, you should understand what you're doing with the software you're using. Absolutely. Hi, Will Pure Wonka. Thanks for tuning in. Mara has announced that its mining pool will stop censoring transactions, so the OFAC stuff is now old news. Yeah, but is it? Because they seem to have announced that, but that was what, 3 or 4 days ago? They still haven't stopped doing it, and they still haven't started signaling for Taproot. So I understand these things take time, but it's all very well saying that, but I mean, did you see the announcement? It sounded like a computer voice that had been mapped onto some sort of CGI generated, like, people were making fun of that a lot. I'm not saying it's all some giant conspiracy or anything like that, but the point is they haven't done what they said they were going to do. So I don't think I want to turn a blind eye to this, because the potential miners have for activating a malicious soft fork has always been a fear of mine, and this OFAC compliance stuff is a good example of. I need to go over something called wipeout, which is what happens when you create a soft fork within Bitcoin. What can happen is, a soft fork is when you don't violate any of the existing rules that the nodes operate on within the Bitcoin network, and you add a new rule. What this means is that anyone that adheres to your new rules, anyone that ignores your new rule but carries on as they were before, will accept what you're doing, even though you're operating under tighter constraints. So with OFAC blocks, people, the existing nodes are going to accept a miner that comes along that says, I accept all the rules of the Bitcoin network, plus some new rules where I'm going to censor transactions that originated from Iran or something like that the US, whatever, this OFAC agency requires me to censor. And then I'm going to write OFAC compliant block in the Coinbase text. They're one pool, they're quite small, but the point is, given the way soft forks work, our nodes will always accept OFAC compliant blocks. Their nodes will continue, because of the software they're running. Over the coming week we will be updating our miners to the full standard Bitcoin Core 21.1, including support for Taproot. Fair enough, but I mean, I really don't care until they actually do. But look, this isn't the point. The point is, I don't want to be in a position where I have to ask miners to give us what we want, because that's not an appropriate position for a miner to be in. The miners are employees of the Bitcoin network. It's not up to them to say, yeah, all right, we'll give you Taproot or we won't. That's not how the system was designed. It screws up the incentive structure monumentally, and it puts them. Look, right now, you're in a position where Antpool can block Taproot. They can do it single-handedly, unilaterally. They can do that for fun, or they can do it to manipulate the market. They can take out a massive short position in Bitcoin, turn off signaling stops, suddenly we're not getting Taproot this difficulty period. There's only 3 left. What are Antpool doing? Oh, they write a tweet. Oh, technical problem, whatever. Reverted to old version of Bitcoin Core, failsafe. Bitcoin price crashes maybe 10%, maybe 5%, maybe more, who knows. Close their short position and go back to doing it. There's no market manipulation. This is Bitcoin. It's not regulated by any of the 3-letter agencies. This is not something they'd even get in trouble for. It would just be, it would be something that might damage their reputation a bit, but maybe they don't care about that. The point is, Bitcoin is a system designed from the bottom up to take incentives into account. It doesn't use laws to force people to act in a way that help other people. It uses human incentives to make people act in a way that, if they work in their own self-interest, they will predictably do what you can predict them to do, and then you're in a situation where you can rely on the future. You can rely on other Bitcoin nodes not ever forking to start allowing for there to be more than 21 million Bitcoins one day. You can rely on that because they don't want their currency to be worth less. That's why they're not going to change Bitcoin to be inflationary. You can rely on that. It's not like there's a law out there that says, oh, you can't run Bitcoin clients that will have a greater inflation rate. Because laws don't work. Laws stop people from doing the things they want to do. Bitcoin does the opposite. It has laws and restrictions that exist primarily because people will only ever do what they want to do in the Bitcoin space. People will never act against their own self-interest in Bitcoin, because if they do, they just lose money. That's it. And it's not like I'm going to act against my own self-interest. I'm going to pay a bunch of money to this person who's telling me they want it, because if I don't, I go to jail. Like, when you pay taxes, you're presumably doing what you don't want to do, and you're only doing it because there's something else you don't want that's being held above your head as a threat, which is jail, fines, whatever. Bitcoin doesn't do that. It just says do exactly what you want, or figure out how you can benefit from this system. And as everyone does that, everything just, it's just so exquisitely beautiful, the way the game theory all holds itself together, and the incentive structure of Bitcoin, it makes it get stronger when it would be under attack. So yeah, I'm going sort of all over the place, guys. I'm getting my thoughts together for what I'm going to discuss on the end of fiat stage. To repeat, it's not going to be live streamed, but it will be uploaded to YouTube quite soon after the event, maybe within 10 minutes or something. I'm not entirely sure what channel it will be on. I think it will be on the Bitcoin Magazine channel. Anyway, I'll probably try and get a copy of it as well that I can upload to my channel for anyone that's interested. So there's kind of a lot to say on it, and Pure Wonka, what you're saying here is what I'm saying making sense, because right now we're in a situation. I didn't really finish my point there. Right now, when you have the way a soft fork works in Bitcoin is, you can say I now want an additional rule to be added to the Bitcoin transactions that I accept. And when you make that claim, when you run software that does that, it doesn't violate any of the already existing rules. So what that means is you're adding a rule that blocks need to be OFAC compliant. They haven't done that yet because they're not actually activating a soft fork. What Mara are doing is they're saying, we're just going to be OFAC compliant, but we don't actually ask that anyone else is OFAC compliant. The problem with this is all you need is about 5% of miners to start doing that, and then they can club together and say, right, 95% of remaining miners, we are now going to start rejecting blocks that don't adhere to our additional rule. We are doing a soft fork. You 95% of miners, if you mine anything that isn't OFAC compliant, we are going to reject your blocks. Now, the reason this is a problem is because, yes, Bitcoin nodes will automatically go with whatever chain is longest. The 95% chain will be much longer than the 5% chain. But the problem is, the 5% chain has a new rule. It will continue going even if it's shorter. The 95% chain doesn't have a new rule. So as long as it's longer, all the Bitcoin nodes will accept it. But if the OFAC chain ever manages to get longer than the 95% chain, all of the nodes automatically drop the old chain and move to the new chain. That's why soft forks actually work, and that's why they can be activated by minorities. One side has wipeout risk, the other doesn't. So if you're part of the 95% and you're ignoring OFAC and you're mining block after block after block and it goes on for months, suddenly, if enough people slowly start moving over to the OFAC side, if that chain ever exceeds the chain you've been mining on, all of your block rewards, everything you've done is now completely gone. It disappears. You didn't mine any blocks. They don't exist anymore because your chain got wiped out by another chain which had a stricter rule set that you were ignoring. Now, the issue with this is, once you have even 5% of the hash rate on the fork chain, the issue is, the fork chain never ever, the soft fork chain never ever risks wipeout because they are insisting on a new rule set. The old chain that's ignoring this hostile soft fork we'll always have to worry about that. That's why we could get SegWit in, because with SegWit we only had a small amount of nodes, but everyone knew if we ignored the SegWit soft fork and carry on mining as usual, we could mine for a year on our own chain where we ignore the soft fork. But if they ever manage to get more hash rate and overtake our chain, we get wiped out, and then all the blocks we mined are done. Don't worry about it, Iceberg. It's just getting to the good part now. So wipeout risk is asymmetric. It means that a small group of people can make a change within Bitcoin, and the people that refuse to go along with that change, if they don't actively reject the chain, if they just carry on like normal, they run something called wipeout risk. Not a good time. They effectively have wipeout risk, and that being the case means that the only game theoretical sensible position for a miner to take in a situation where there's a minority soft fork happening is to go along with the soft fork, because you know for sure any blocks you mine on that chain are never going to get wiped out, because you have an additional rule that all the nodes will accept, but you will continue to this network will continue to reject blocks that don't adhere to your new rule. And the same is not true in reverse, so it's an asymmetric risk. This is how we got SegWit in. So my point being, all that is to say, Pure Wonka, let's get back to the point. If you have Mara pool plus, you know, whatever it takes to get to 5 to 10% of the hash rate of Bitcoin, start saying we will not accept or build on top of blocks that aren't OFAC compliant anymore. Once they do that, the 90% that remains gets really nervous, because they can ignore it while they're the dominant majority, but the minute OFAC compliant blocks become the majority, then that chain overtakes the 90% chain, which, because it's no longer 90%, then what happens is all of your work gets rewritten and validated by a parallel chain that comes on and finally overtakes it. What that means is it just makes sense for everyone to switch over to OFAC compliance very quickly. And this is a hostile attack, and it's not even a 51% attack that you'd hear about all the time. It's eventually a 51% attack, but it starts off as much less than that. And it's a concern. And the point is, in Bitcoin, we don't ever rely upon people being nice. And I don't want to rely on Marapool getting bullied on Twitter and going, all right, we're sorry, we're going to stop doing the OFAC compliant blocks soon. And we're going to, we'll signal for Taproot. I don't ever want to be in a position where the miners can screw around with us like that. If they did what I'm saying, what my fear is, where they soft fork in OFAC compliance, it gets very difficult, because we have to do a counter soft fork that would somehow reject blocks that are produced by people adhering to OFAC standards. That's a really complicated thing to organize, and we are decentralized. OFAC compliance is centralized, so they can move very quickly and efficiently. They can organize in a hotel room in 5 minutes, just like Michael Saylor did with Marapool and a bunch of other American miners, to get this whole energy concerns thing and pull that PR stunt. And in 5 minutes they can just say, okay, we're rejecting blocks. Like Marapool, a couple of other American mining companies, we're rejecting non-OFAC compliant blocks. They go off on their own network for a bit. Maybe it doesn't have any monetary value for a bit, but maybe they can mine at a loss for a while. That's okay. This isn't a very likely attack, because there is a big financial cost to failure for the soft fork side, and if they really just don't get going strong enough, like, you do need 5 or 6% or something before this is realistic. If you only have 1% or 2%, it's likely your chain would just wither away and die, and then it no longer is a concern to the incumbent chain. Anyway, Fabian, welcome to the stream. Thanks for connecting. Discovered your channel from a post on Reddit a few months ago, and I must say I learnt the most things about Bitcoin through your videos so far. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. You're absolutely welcome, man, and you're also completely welcome to request any topics you want me to do videos on. I'm always happy to discuss this stuff. I always learn more about Bitcoin when I explain it to people. You don't really understand it until you can explain it anyway, and explaining Bitcoin is difficult. So yeah, it's a little concerning. Dorirsky. Sorry for massacring your name there. I guess you're from east of where I'm from, which is West Europe. Um, it's a bit concerning. It is a part of Bitcoin's design from the off that people could do this. Um, I think I haven't really come up with a solution for it, to be honest. It's not. The only thing is that OFAC compliance is not native to Bitcoin itself. It's an external rule set imposed by an American. I think OFAC is an American agency. It might be global. I have no idea. I don't know what OFAC actually is. But the point is, it's externally imposed. So who's to say what is OFAC compliant and what isn't OFAC compliant? There isn't. That's all down to discretion and legality and all that stuff. It's not internal to Bitcoin's own ecosystem, so the rules are kind of hard for them. Like you can, for example, you can say, all right, I'll write OFAC compliant block in my Coinbase text and I'm mining from Russia or something like that. You can do that, sure, but are you OFAC compliant? I don't know, but nonetheless you've complied with the soft fork, so on we go. And then you can denature the intent of the soft fork by just complying with it in a way where it doesn't make any difference to Bitcoin. Then you also have financial penalties as well. If they do go with this censoring route that they're taking, where they're saying certain transactions can't be included in blocks in order to be OFAC compliant, what happens is there builds up an incredible amount of economic incentive for some miner to include one of those transactions, because they will start paying much higher fees. Those are basically illegal transactions where someone's like, oh, I've got a bunch of Bitcoin that I generated at mining in Iran and I need to move it, and that violates OFAC's rules. So I'm going to pay a transaction fee of $20,000 to move this. Some miner then has to leave that $20,000 transaction. Sorry, the transaction could be for millions of dollars, but there's $20,000 in fees for them that they're walking away from by refusing to include that transaction in a block in order to comply with OFAC. That's a lot of money, and as time progresses, remember the Bitcoin rewards half every 4 years. Meanwhile, the fees go up and up and up. So as the fees become increasingly a big part of what miners get as their income, it's going to be hard for them to ignore fees that violate standards put on transactions by external entities like OFAC. So, look, I'm not worried about it. I know Bitcoin will be all right, and I know that even if Bitcoin was in serious trouble with it, it's not like there's some alternative that has a better solution to any of this. Bitcoin is the only thing that has a chance. Like, Bitcoin is something that I've been in for so long, and I've had to defend so much to people with their questions about it that are so rudimentary, that I always come across like I'm just so confident in Bitcoin. It's the perfect system. Nothing can go wrong with it. But it needs to be presented that way to people, because with regard to most people's concerns about it, that's true. But then when you get deep into Bitcoin and you start to really look at some of the deep elements of the ecosystem, it does have problems, but they're not insurmountable. But they keep you up at night. You want to work on them, you want to figure them out. But it's inappropriate to talk about that with newcomers, because new people will look at it and go, oh, all right, Bitcoin's fucked then. All right, I'll switch to Ethereum, because none of these things make sense. Nothing else is within 1% as resilient as what Bitcoin is. But because Bitcoin is the chain where all the interest and the desire and the market for super resilient, hard, censorship resistant money is, that means it has to be perfect at being that. And it's not the easiest thing to do. It's the only real attempt humanity's ever made that ever got anywhere, and it's the only one that's likely to ever succeed. This is the thing. To 99% of the world, I say Bitcoin is perfect. Use it. Have 100% confidence in it. It's amazing. It's the best thing ever. Nothing can ever go wrong. To 1% of the world or 0.1% of the world that want to go a bit more nuanced than that, I say Bitcoin has a whole bunch of problems, but nothing like as bad as every other system. In every other system, you're likely to have so much more go wrong. In fact, you're guaranteed to have so much more go wrong. So Bitcoin's your only shot. And I have more confidence in Bitcoin than anything else. So that secondary perspective is the more nuanced one that I like to, caveat everything I say with, because Bitcoin's not perfect. Nothing's perfect. Bitcoin's just really, really good, and it makes everything else that people treat as reliable and gospel, like the US dollar and the stability of various cryptos that, you know, use blockchains but don't have anything by way of decentralized communities or proper eyes on the code, or have a reasonable, mature approach to scaling, and just completely throw caution to the wind with these smart contracting platforms. Or they don't even pretend to do anything. They're just centralized databases, and they're basically reinventing MMORPG databases, which is like, oh, I have 8,000 gold on World of Warcraft. It's like, that's basically the same system as what you're doing with centralized cryptos. I don't understand how anyone could see that as interesting or innovative or anything like that. But they're also just not secure systems. They're not robust. Anyway, let's catch up on the chat here. Rock Molhar, hey man, keep doing what you're doing. We need more real Bitcoiners in this shitcoin world. Your videos are awesome. Thank you, Rock. I appreciate your sentiment there. It is a shitcoin world. You know, since I got to Miami, I've heard 2 people call it Crypto 2021. I don't know why they've somehow even managed to get the name of it wrong. It's Bitcoin 2021. It's not Crypto 2021. I've seen 2 people. Like, I met like a group of people in the hotel. They were asking me what I was doing here. I said I'm talking at Bitcoin 2021, and they're like, "Oh, it's a crypto conference." I'm like, it's endlessly frustrating to have to separate these 2 worlds of Bitcoin and crypto, and how they really are just nothing to do with one another on any sort of philosophical level. Just some of the technical components of what Bitcoin is lifted over and borrowed by the crypto world, but even then, crypto seems to be all about smart contracting now, which is kind of maturing in Bitcoin too, actually. But, you know, people have yet to figure out what a good use case for smart contracts really is. And apart from just scamming people and pretending to be decentralized finance, once people actually figure out what that is, it starts to show up on the Bitcoin layer itself, on the Bitcoin protocol. Like, Playboy magazine released some NFT thing, but they're doing it on Liquid's sidechain, which is a sidechain that sits on top of Bitcoin. I'm fine with people doing all these silly NFT projects and stuff. If you want to do them on top of Bitcoin, that's fine, because you're not lending credibility to a scam, and maybe you actually have some high hopes and for the long-term future of your project. If you work hard on a project, you're not gonna upload that smart contract to Ethereum, because it's not designed to last. And if it is, you can use it as a rail like the stable coins do, and that's fair enough, because then if Ethereum collapses, it doesn't matter, it doesn't affect you, you're just using it as a like temporary middleware. Anyway, Fabian again, I think you have some project or someone claiming to be, if you have some project or someone claiming to be perfect, it's a clear warning sign. Yeah, of course, and that's another thing about all the cryptos, aren't they? They're just like, they'll claim perfect decentralization, 10 times the transaction speed of Bitcoin, 100 times the block. I mean, Elon Musk, he tweeted it literally. He's like, okay, we're going to do with Dogecoin, we're going to go 1,000 times faster with the transactions, and 100th of the energy used, all this stuff. And people are like, sure, okay, I'm going to build a rocket. This rocket's going to be 8,000 times larger than the normal rocket. It's going to use only 1% of the fuel you're using. Like, you can say this stuff, but it doesn't mean you have any understanding of rocket science or computer science. So it's quite funny when they go into that stuff. Yeah, you shouldn't dabble in things if you don't understand them, unless you're willing to go, oh, I was wrong, which Elon Musk doesn't seem to be able to do. So nice listening to an OG. I appreciate that compliment, man. I've been in since 2013. Good, man. 2013 was a great fun year. Like, I don't know if people know how stressful it was. That was my first, summer 2013. It feels funny calling it that. For anyone listening here that's been just into Bitcoin, just got in recently since the beginning of the last bull run, which is, since the COVID crash in March 2020. So since then, what's happening now in the market feels like a bear market. But if you were in 2013, it ran up at the beginning of the year. It was like $10 or something a Bitcoin. It ran all the way up to 266 in April, and then it just corrected for a couple of months. But it actually felt like a full-on bear market. It was rough, and it went down all the way to like June or July, and then it bottomed, I think, at $50, and then it went all the way up to $1,100-1,200 depending on which exchange you go by, and that was the real bull run, and that was the one everyone thought would never come back, right? In 2014, that was my first actual bear market. So I'm just saying this because right now, what's going on with the market to me actually feels like, it doesn't feel like a bear market to me. It feels like what happened in 2013. It feels like we got really overexcited, got far too hot, really overheated, and a little bit of bad news, Elon Musk doing some stupid stuff, so environmental FUD attacking and all that stuff, made the market absolutely tank. In under a week we just absolutely tanked, but here we are hovering around the high 30,000s. This isn't a bear market, for anyone that's wondering. This does not feel like a bear market to me at all, and all the people I trust in the space have the same feeling, and that feeling is important because that feeling, markets ultimately, is driven on sentiment. And I feel the people I feel the most sorry for are the people right now who bought Bitcoin without knowing what they were really buying, saw it crash, sold a bunch in a panic, either at a loss or at maybe not much of a gain, and are now going to have to watch over the next maybe 3 or 4 months as things start to move in the more positive direction again, and watch us crush old 60k all-time high, 64k. I still believe $100,000 is very likely this year or next year, and frankly that the sustainability of us being up in the 6-figure territory is just so much helped by this recent crash we've had, because every noobish, nervous, unsure of themselves, poorly researched investor that has been buying and selling, that bought into the previous run around Tesla, the Tesla pump, all of them have sold and capitulated into very, very dedicated, hardcore holding Bitcoiners. Those are the people I want to have Bitcoin, because ultimately they hold it, they lessen the volatility in the market, and they speed up the process of us. The bigger Bitcoin gets, the better, basically. And let me just read this iceberg. Can government subsidies help some miners censor transactions at a cost and only be OFAC compliant and charge some premium or some bullshit like that? Exactly what I'm worried about. Exactly. That's why Michael Saylor went from hero to zero in my mind pretty much overnight, because and Elon tweeting about carbon taxes, stuff like that. Once you screw with the incentives of miners, you add all these externalities to the Bitcoin's game theory that screw it up. The point is, if you look at stuff in a raw capitalistic model, Tesla is a failed company. But the reason they do okay is because the government steals your money via taxation, writes a bunch of tax credits, gives that to Elon Musk because he's not burning fossil fuels directly anyway, who he then sells it over to the manufacturers of fossil fuel consuming or combustion engine manufacturers. And then what happens? He makes money off of those people, and as a result, you have Tesla is effectively subsidized by the government, and not by the fact that they're not selling a product that people want and therefore they exist as a business. They just continue to exist in order to be a funnel for green money that is involuntarily paid by taxpayers. And this is why we hate socialism so much. This is why we hate collectivism in general, because you pervert incentives, and it's why in countries that run like that, nothing works properly, because you ultimately need, I don't want to come across as a justification for like heartless capitalism, and it's so unpopular, but I mean, at the end of the day, if someone's paycheck depends upon them providing a good service, or a good a functional good or service, then they're going to do it. But if they can completely trounce the product, I'm not saying Tesla's a bad product, by the way, I think it is a good product, but if the only way your business is viable is because taxpayers are giving you money that they don't want to be giving you because of environmental concerns, that screws up the incentive model massively. So when it comes to OFAC compliant miners, one of the attacks we can use against them is by doing transactions that violate their standards, and using huge transaction fees that they will then miss out on, that creates a financial penalty. But as you say, they can be externally subsidized, and when it's internal subsidies within the Bitcoin network via transaction fees, great, that's all internal to Bitcoin, and that keeps the game theory neat and tight. But when you get incentives that come perversely from outside through carbon credits and stuff like that, that screws stuff up. You can mine on your non-compliant chain. You can create a fork of Bitcoin with 1% of the hash rate that is impossible to ignore, because if it ever gets above 50%, then it will overtake the normal chain and ruin all the non-compliant miners' income retroactively. That sucks. That would absolutely suck for Bitcoin if that happened. And the only way it would be viable is if a government agency subsidized them and said, mine at a loss. You're effectively mining on a secondary chain of Bitcoin that has no market value yet anyway. We are going to subsidize you. We'll bankroll you while you mine, and we'll fund the attack, basically. If this happens, it would be a very clever and nuanced attack on Bitcoin. People aren't worried about it like they should be, but when you committed 10 years of your life to a project like I have, you tend to get very worried about things when they aren't necessarily very likely to happen. This hasn't happened yet for a bunch of reasons, and I'm glad to see that. But I'm still racking my brains on a solution for it, and there isn't really one that I can see, because it's an external condition. There's nothing you can do internally within the protocol to reject this stuff, apart from crudely say, all right, the Bitcoin OGs are now doing their own soft fork where they will reject any block that has OFAC compliance written into the Coinbase text. But it doesn't matter. That doesn't stop anyone from censoring transactions. There is some way I can conceive of where we can have it so that every 10 minutes some transaction is somehow generated that violates OFAC's guidelines, and its inclusion in a block is part of the requirements for the validity of a block, and that would be a counter soft fork that we could propose. That's a way of doing something there, and necessity is the mother of invention. I think that could actually come along and provide us with a solution. Luke Jr.'s solution to this is always proof of work change. That is the one that scares me more than anything. I really don't want to do that, because then you basically turn billions of dollars of Bitcoin mining equipment into paperweights overnight, and all they'll do is go and mine some other coin that uses the same algorithm, so they'll all go over to Bcash or Bitcoin SV or one of these other fake versions of Bitcoin, because otherwise they can't do anything with their hardware. So I don't like the idea of a proof of work change at all, but maybe it might need to be done in the long term anyway, and it might be better to rip that band-aid off sooner rather than later. But I think I'd rather let sleeping dogs lie with the current proof of work algorithm. Anyway, Tavel, still don't know how to say your name, bro. What's up? I'm good, man. I'm just here in Miami. I'm getting ready. I'm psyching myself up for my talk on Saturday on the end of Fiat stage on the Taproot activation client I released. 20,000 people, the 20k people suffered for years. Yeah, I know what you mean, man. But look, man, Solar Van Life, who really bought Bitcoin at 19,666? How many people actually bought there? I mean, we were there for hours. Nothing, like, we were above 16,000 for a few days. But I mean, yeah, if you bought then, okay, that sucked. But I really hope you, like, I think there's a very small amount of people that really did buy at that point. And did they exclusively buy at 20k? Did they buy some at 5k, 10k, 15k? Like, I've bought Bitcoin at 58,000. I have, because I'm always buying Bitcoin whenever I can. If there's ever any spare cash around, I'll buy some. I've bought some at, I've never bought any above 60,000, I'm glad to say, but I have bought Bitcoin in the 50,000s, and we're at 39,000 now. You know, it's okay, because I also bought Bitcoins for, you know, single digits, double digits, triple digits. I've been here since it was, I wasn't there before the days where it reached dollar parity, but I was there pretty soon afterwards. I'm sorry as well, but some of them remain and learn about Bitcoin, so it's not completely bad. I think that's in reference to something I was talking about 5 or 6 minutes ago, so I've kind of forgotten my thread there. Sorry about that, Ale. Elon decimating foreign lands, digging up metals for batteries, and collecting green subsidies. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is hypocritical beyond belief. It's infuriating, especially when you have this basic fact, which is the greenest, by percentage, industry in the world is Bitcoin mining. There's nothing greener than it, because the incentives just mean people have to use green technology because it's the only thing that turns a profit, or it's always a greater profit. It's always more Bitcoin for your electricity or for your money spent on electricity if you mine Bitcoins renewably. And that turns out to be such a better motivator than anything else anyone could think of. Recycling initiatives and government taxes and anything to try and penalize dirty, whatever it's called. All it ends up being is just moving taxpayer money into oil company hands. And that's every anti-carbon initiative. It's just scams after scams. If you really are an environmentalist, Bitcoin is how you fix the environment, in my opinion. I've really only heard Bitcoin Mechanic and Charles Hoskinson mention that Tesla is lifted by government subsidies. Yeah, and let me be honest, I didn't know this either. I was drinking the Tesla Kool-Aid. I thought it was cool. I thought it was dope. I was ready almost to buy a Cybertruck. But after he attacked Bitcoin and Bitcoiners went on the counter attack and exposed what a fraud of an industry he's operating in, I was stunned to learn all this stuff, and I'm glad to repeat it here. But yeah, I can't believe that. I mean, I can believe it, but the viability of his business it's not just in question; it's demonstrably completely unrealistic, and it's not a thing to say, hey, I can provide cheap. Like, this is why I liked Musk. His plan was, I'm going to provide electric vehicles for people, but cheap, realistic electric vehicles, so that we actually have a chance of replacing the internal combustion engine and making it providable for everyday people, not just status symbols and luxury vehicles. But if your only means of doing that is by basically saying, hey, this $45,000 vehicle really would cost $90,000 if I wasn't subsidized by taxpayers. Basically, the super rich aren't paying the taxes. The taxes are paid by everyone collectively. So that means we collectively fund the cost of everyone that's buying a Tesla. That's not the way I want to go about this whole thing. And it's just so disingenuous to pretend that you're providing something. And the implication about Tesla has always been, I have this genius and very tightly organized supply chain, so I can provide Tesla's electric vehicles cheaper than any of my competitors. It's just not accurate to say that when you're really just living off government handouts like he is. Tesla could barely survive without subsidies. I don't think they could do anything like survive. I think they'd be absolutely destroyed overnight if they didn't have the subsidies. Only profitable quarter was because Tesla bought Bitcoin. Yeah, but I mean, they didn't actually sell any, did they? Oh yeah, well they did. They sold 10%, right, to demonstrate liquidity or some spurious claim like that. I'm not sure. I don't know what I believe with regard to their press releases anymore. But yeah, it's so bizarre, isn't it, that Tesla, a company lauded for being the greenest thing ever, gets a lot of flack for buying Bitcoin and having it on its balance sheet due to the environmental damage, when Bitcoin mining is greener than Tesla charging. And that's before you even take into consideration the fact that, you've got all these slave children mining in cobalt and all these precious metals in Africa where there's no standards, and like no one's doing that with Bitcoin. Like there's not child exploitation going on in Bitcoin mining. Yeah, Saifedean Ammous also has a great podcast on that topic. Yeah, Saifedean's great. I never find the time to listen to him. I still haven't read the Bitcoin Standard. He was a big help in evangelizing me into carnivory, and I have good results when I eat as a carnivore. I definitely do. Appreciate that, Rock. Saifedean's book is something I'm looking to read. Yeah, people talk about the Bitcoin Standard a lot. It looks like a great book. As I say, I haven't read it yet. Luke isn't a junior. His last name ends with JR. Yeah, I don't know if you're joking there. He's called Luke Jr. or Luke Dash Jr. But I mean, his handle, I'll just pull it up here. His handle on IRC is Luke Dash or hyphen JR. So I don't think his name is. Maybe the JR is an abbreviation. Maybe his name is like Jeremy, Luke Jeremy or something. I don't know. I believe. I don't know. It's just part of his privacy, I guess. He's not putting his full name out there, and he's pretty concerned. Luke is actually pretty concerned about legal attacks from Craig Wright and other assholes that adversarial to Bitcoin. But you're saying his dad isn't called Luke, and he's not. I don't know. I actually don't know. You still DCA every week? Solar Van Life bought close to 60k. Yeah, well that'll happen if you DCA. DCAing is. I don't love it, to be honest. I mean, I don't have a regular job. If I did, I would DCA by default. But if you believe Bitcoin's going up, then you buy as much as soon as possible, don't you? You don't go, I'll buy half now and half in a week, and then all I think of is in a week the Bitcoin price is likely to be higher than it is now. But I should tell people that DCA is a good thing because it is definitely a more mature way to go about things. It's like Laval University in Quebec, but with a T Taval. Taval. I don't know how to pronounce Laval. I have exactly the same problem pronouncing Laval University as I do with your name. So I'll look up that Quebec University and then start putting a T at the beginning of it next stream, I promise. Thank you for the valuable information. Wish you a great day. You're welcome, Ale. I hope I'm saying your name right. James Creevy. Ford and GM buy carbon credits from Tesla to let them pollute more. Yeah, exactly. So ultimately you're paying more for your Ford. The fact that Teslas are only cheap insofar as other people have to pay more for their Ford and GM cars because they have to. If you buy a Ford, some of that money goes to Tesla, basically. Like, some people might think that's a good thing, incentive-wise. I don't. I think that's a horrific way to go about things. I wanted a Tesla, but not anymore. And there will be other electronic vehicles too. Electric vehicles, it's fine. Yeah, I agree. I was all about the Tesla. Now I'm not. I'm definitely not buying a Tesla. For me, I'd feel embarrassed driving one, just given how every Bitcoiner I know cancelled their Cybertruck pre-orders or whatever, and it was nice to see. I buy whenever I have dollars beyond what I need for bills, regardless of price. Yeah, me too. That said, if the price crashes a lot, I will usually spend with money I didn't really consider spendable, because I just can't resist it. So if right now it's not looking like it's looking kind of promising, the market at the moment, let's be honest. After the big crash we had, it looks like we're back nosing above 39,000. It's nice to see, but at the same time, a lot of that might just be Miami conference hype. If it drops down to the 20Ks again, I'll be excited to buy. Anyway, I've gone way off topic for what the purpose of this stream was, which is to try and get my thoughts in order for what I'm going to talk about with regard to the Taproot activation client. I'll try. I think I might have to end the stream soon and start writing some stuff down on paper. I'm just going to show you Miami again quickly. This is the view from my hotel. It's nothing particularly special. It's just a bunch of skyscrapers, really. I'm not in Miami Beach. I'm in downtown Miami, so as to be nearer to the conference. Had I known what downtown Miami was like, I would have definitely stayed at the beach instead of downtown. And getting to the beach is actually really annoying. You have to take a bridge, and the traffic's terrible on the bridge. Anyway, I think I'm going to end the stream there, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. We got up to, I think it was 22 viewers at one point. I think that's a record for this channel's live streams anyway. I'm getting a lot more viewers on the videos that I upload recently. I really appreciate the comments and the questions. Yeah, Iceberg, I'm glad you appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun for me learning how to stream and to start putting myself out there a bit more. Remember, guys, any subscription or likes, they tend to help the channel a lot. Comments help a lot. Any engagement with it just helps me. I'm not trying to be an engagement whore, but at the same time it's just useful for me to get this channel going. And by the same token, if you want videos on a specific topic within Bitcoin or something at least related, please don't hesitate to ask, because it gives me a lot of joy preparing videos for people, and discussing topics that people want to know about and learning about them more myself in the process. So yeah, please do that. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone, and have a great day. And if you can watch, if you're going to tune in to Bitcoin 2021, I'll be at the end of Fiat stage. There probably will be a sort of cowboy live stream of it. It's just not officially live streamed. So tune into that. I'll be on at 2:30 Eastern time on Saturday, and I'll be giving a 15-minute talk on my activation for Taproot, which runs in parallel to the mainstream one. Anyway, I've got a phone call again that I got to take, so I'm gonna rush off and take that. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Peace.